Coming up on today's show, we are going to look at some under-the-radar players to watch for at Denver's training camp, which is now underway. So welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, starting off with a wide receiver as an under-the-radar guy, Marquez Callaway. So a former New Orleans Saint, stop me if you've heard this before, has come and followed Sean Payton to the Mile High City. And he might not be a guy that everyone knows about right now, but I think he's going to make a name for himself during the preseason because he's going to get a lot of reps and opportunities in the preseason. And I think Callaway is someone that's going to do a lot of good things for the Broncos this year. We're going to throw some of his stats on the screen and whatnot throughout the show, but Marquez Callaway is someone that has some deep threat potential to him, right? I want to show you some stats really quickly here of Marquez Callaway and some other players in the NFL. Like, compare his numbers in 2021 to Courtland Sutton last season. And I just tossed out Terry McLaurin as kind of a reference point, if you will, because I want to show you guys what these guys can do when it comes to stretching the field. Marquez Callaway in 2021 had 46 grabs. He averaged 15.1 yards reception, and he had 7 receptions that I deem as a big play, 20 or more yards. Compare that to Courtland Sutton, who had 11 of those 20-plus yard receptions, but off of 64 receptions. So the hope is that Marquez Callaway can come in here and be a big play factor for Denver, something that they are really missing when it comes to the wide receivers. And then to compare that to just, I would say a really good receiver in Terry McLaurin, he is leaps and bounds ahead of those guys, and that's what Denver's trying to get to. But Marquez Callaway, his breakout year in 2021 for the New Orleans Saints, 84 targets, 46 receptions, 698 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Unfortunately, he took a step back that next season, but I think Callaway can be someone that in a rotation as the wide receiver 4 or 5 or whatever in this offense can offer you some upside as a return man. He did that in college at Tennessee. And then in New Orleans, he had a habit of making some good punt returns in his rookie season. That's really how he found a spot on the Saints roster as a UDFA. And then he grew as a wide receiver. Now, last year in the Big Easy, it wasn't good as we just looked at the stats. But altogether, it wasn't really good for New Orleans. I mean, they had a quarterback change midway through the year. Head coach Dennis Allen isn't the smartest bulb. Go look at what he did when he was the Raiders head coach. But I think Callaway's a name that you might not know right now, but you're going to know as the preseason continues. Now, grade Denver's wide receiver room for me. A, B, C, D, or F. Between Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, and I'm going to put Marvin Mims as that 4th guy. What kind of grade does it warrant in your eyes? It doesn't have a true apex star yet, but if Jerry Jeudy becomes that apex guy, man, Denver's receiver room goes from like a B to an A in my eyes. Moving on to the second under-the-radar player to watch for, how about Jonathon Cooper, former 7th-round pick out of Ohio State that has somewhat been buried on Denver's outside linebacker depth chart. I mean, when we look at the Broncos linebacker room as a whole, Frank Clark and Randy Gregory are your 2 starting guys on the outside. Baron Browning is going to miss the foreseeable future as he comes off knee surgery. Nick Bonito needs to take a big step forward, but there's good old Jay Cooper in the bottom left side of your screen. And Cooper is someone who's kind of in the grass right now, but he's going to get opportunities. And last year and the season before that, his first 2 years in the NFL, the numbers don't scream out to you like this is a guy who's about to have a breakout season. 2 sacks a year ago, but 2 sacks, 2.5 sacks, 4.5 sacks in his NFL career as someone who's only had a couple of starts. Like, to me, it looks like he might not be a 10-plus sack player. But if he gets a lot of snaps and he gets a lot of, opportunities, he could make the most of that, and he could turn 2 sacks with more playing time into 5 or 6 sacks. And hey, finding 6 sacks from a 7th-round pick feels like a huge win for the Broncos. Plus, with Baron Browning out, and I just can't rely on Randy Gregory to save my life, I think Jonathon Cooper is going to get more snaps, more playing time, and we're going to see more of the former Buckeye. And what I've seen so far, I've liked. So I'm excited to see what he can do if he gets more of an opportunity, and that's coming in 2023. The third player that's an under-the-radar guy is defensive end Matt Henningsen. the 7th-round pick, out of Wisconsin last season, had a okay rookie season. But when I look at Denver's defensive line, I just don't know who's starting next to DJ Jones. Like, I know Zach Allen's starting. I know DJ Jones is starting. But Jonathan Harris, Tyler Lancaster, Matt Henningsen, Mike Purcell, like, there is a battle to be had now that Wazurike is out of the mix for that last defensive end position. So with Zach Allen and DJ Jones being the only guarantees on that front three defensive line, Matt Henningsen has an opportunity to take a starting job by the reins and hold on to it. Now, last year, he had some good in the games down the stretch. 21 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. But we didn't see a whole lot of him early on. And honestly, did we really see a whole lot of any rookies last year? Like Nick Bonito, more or less redshirt of the year, along with Wazurike. Matt Henningsen, not so much. Luke Wattenberg, what we did see, we didn't like to see. So this is an opportunity for last year's rookie class to get more of an opportunity and to make the most of it if they get the chance. Now, some other metrics I want to share with you guys for Mr. Henningsen. PFF grades from last season. 63.1. I know 63 out of 100 doesn't sound like a good grade, but for someone who was buried on the depth chart as a rookie and a late day 3 draft pick, those are pretty good starting numbers in the NFL and a good spot to build off of. Good against the run, 70.1. Just not a very good pass rusher. And hey, if you don't want to bring him in on 3rd and 10, don't do that then. But have him come in on 1st and 2nd down, early downs when you're expecting the run, and that's where he can be at his best. Then on 3rd down, when it's 3rd and 11, you're trying to get after the quarterback, take him off and get Baron Browning, Randy Gregory, Frank Clark, and Jonathon Cooper, all of your best pass rushers on the field at once. Before we get on to the rest of our under-the-radar players, if you are enjoying the content here at the Broncos Breakdown, you know how YouTube works. The more subscribers we get, the more studio space we get, and then that means more content for you, the viewers at home. So consider subscribing if you have not already. It would go a long way. 4th player that's an under-the-radar guy, and I'm kind of breaking my own rule here of no rookies because how can you be under the radar as a rookie? But Drew Sanders. The more I think about Drew Sanders in this defense, the more I really start to like what Denver did in day 2 of this year's draft. Because when we look at Denver's inside linebacker room, you've got great pieces in Josie Jewell, who I was a huge fan of last year. Alex Singleton re-signs and finally gets paid, and someone I doubted when they signed him last offseason, and he came in the clutch last year when Jonas Griffith and Josie Jewell both dealt with injuries early in the season. But Drew Sanders, the guy is a franchise linebacker in my eyes. He's someone that you could see building a defense around, right? Someone who could be in the middle of the defense for 2 contracts, right? 4 years on his rookie deal, and then another 3 to 4 years on his second contract. Getting 8 years out of an inside linebacker who you took in the second day of the NFL draft feels like a very big win for the Broncos, and I think Drew Sanders can be that player. You look at what he did last season in Arkansas after transferring from Alabama, a former 5-star recruit, 9.5 sacks, 13.5 tackles for loss. The guy put up crazy good numbers as an inside linebacker. I mean, you would think those numbers would be someone coming off the edge. No, he's one of the best blitzing off-ball linebackers in football, and he's going to bring that mentality to the Broncos. His PFF grades from his final season at Arkansas, 79.2 overall. PFF does not grade college players very lightly. It's not easy to impress them. So to find 79.2 overall grade, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he didn't go undoubtedly top 10. He's not a perfect linebacker. He has some issues in coverage, but then again, 77.8. He picked off Ben DiNucci. I don't think his coverage issues are as big as some people make him out to be, but I'm a huge fan of Drew Sanders, and I think everyone watching this video, when you watch preseason games, the first time you watch him play, you're going to go, who is that guy? Because you all have that little moment. We have to get refamiliarized with all the new players and their new jersey numbers. So you're going to go to the Broncos website, look at the roster, and go, oh, holy shit, that's the Arkansas guy, Drew Sanders. Like, he is really good. Everyone's going to get to that point, that first preseason game against Arizona. And I'm just going to say, if Drew Sanders gets the opportunity to start in 2023, whether that's because Jewell or Singleton gets injured or for whatever reason, once he gets that starting role, even if it's just for 1 week or that's the plan, he ain't giving up that starting role. Like, I think he's the kind of guy that could come in and after a couple of weeks and getting the hang of things and getting the NFL speed down and getting in some good reps on special teams, if he comes in and starts for you in week 6 or 7, he is going to ball out, and there's just no way a coaching staff could look at that and go, well, thank you for your 1 game of service. We're going to go back to the old starter now. Not with Drew Sanders. I think he's got that type of ceiling and potential. 5th and final under-the-radar player is Luke Wattenberg, the former Washington Husky. We won't go too in-depth on Mr. Wattenberg, but here's my 2 cents on this. He was bad last year. If you don't remember because you didn't really want to care to watch the last couple of games, I can't really blame you for that, or at least not watch too passionately of the offensive line. But he was bad. He played a couple games, and it was not good. But, big but, Cushenberry is not much better. And he does not have this starting job sewed up and locked up so that there's no competition to be had. So if you're Wattenberger's like level after last season, if there's one position to be on this team, it is center. Because in other spots, like if he was a wide receiver, I don't think there'd be much conversation about him even making this roster after the way he played last year. But because he is at the center position where Denver has a question mark, a good training camp and a good preseason to bounce back after a sluggish rookie year, he could find himself in the mix to win that starting job. To wrap up the show, you know what we like to do. First take a hot take for our summer hot takes today because it is a high of 93 degrees. At least that's what the weatherman said as I record this during our live show on Tuesday at 3 o'clock Mountain Time. So my first hot take is Sean Payton will be in the running for NFL Coach of the Year. I feel like I kind of pussied out for this first hot take, but you know what? Sean Payton is one of the best NFL head coaches out there, and I think he's going to get some traction. Now, we know that in order to win Coach of the Year, you can't be Andy Reid, right? Because the expectations with Andy Reid and the Chiefs are so high that if he gets to 12 or 13 wins, people are just going to go, well, he was supposed to. He has Patrick Mahomes. But when you're coaching a team that won 5 games last year, you turn 5 wins into 10 wins, you're going to get some attraction. And if your name is Sean Payton, you're going to have that notoriety. And if you do that with a team that everyone kind of crossed off and said, oh, they're a bust, that Russell Wilson trade's going to be awful, there's no way they bounce back from that. Well, I'm here to remind you, Denver lost 9 one-score games last season. Like, they went toe-to-toe with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens were a different team last year without Lamar Jackson, who they lost in that game. But the point is, the Broncos had a lot of one-score games against teams that had very successful seasons, which just goes to show there's talent on this roster, and despite how bad the coaching staff was last year and the quarterback play in general, they were able to overcome that and at least keep themselves competitive and in games. So all Sean Payton has to come in here and do is fix Russell Wilson, not a very light thing to do, but he also just has to correct some minor adjustments because they were 90% of the way there in a lot of games last year. Sean Payton, he can get them that extra 10% and plus and get them over the hump. So that's my hot take for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to come watch this episode of the Broncos Breakdown. We'll see you guys later.